But the camera is just black. I don't know why.
We can hear you. Maybe it might work itself out. Good morning. Good morning. This is Monica Kunsekwe-Guta here on Salve TV. We are having a little bit of technical issues with the camera, but Professor Tsitsi Chataika is here with us today, and we are so looking forward to hear about her story and what inspires her to serve. My name is Monica Kunsekwe-Guta. I am your host. I'm also a life coach and an author. And Professor Tsitsi Chataika, can you introduce yourself to your audience? Can you hear us?
Hello, how are you? How are you, Monica? I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, so can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Monica. My name is Professor Tsitsi Chataika from the University of Zimbabwe, where I teach inclusive education and disability inclusion in the Faculty of Education and the Department of Educational Foundations. And I'm a disability activist trying to increase the inclusion of persons with disabilities in daily activities to ensure that their rights are also observed. So in short, basically, that's who Tsitsi is. And as we go along and talking, I think you'll know more about myself. Thank you very much, Monica.
Thank you. We are waiting for Reverend Maforo. He's going to be here in about 5 minutes. He's been delayed.
Fine.
He's been delayed, but so probably before he gets here, I would expanding on your introduction. What inspired you to go that route?
Interesting story. I remember very well. It was in 1986, precisely, when I was training as a teacher's college. So we were about to go for teaching practice. Then, when you wanted to train as a teacher, you would spend 4 years. 2 years on campus and 2 years in practice. So it was my first year to go into practice. And then I went to Mrewa Primary School. So we'll do something, what they'll call micro teaching. So it's like a pre-run before you go into the field. So I went for 2 weeks and I was teaching grade 3. I met this wonderful young guy called Voice. He was a beautiful, a very handsome and very intelligent young guy. And he was blind. So I was teaching him in my class, but each time he wanted support that is impairment specific, that wanted to address his impairment specific needs, he would then be withdrawn from my class to get support from a resource teacher. Like they would transcribe his work into Braille. If I give him homework, they would take it to the teacher, to the resource teacher to transcribe. So I was like, what can I do to ensure that Voice is not withdrawn for my class? How can I support him fully whilst it's my class? So the teacher told me the process: you need to finish your studies first, and then you teach, and then you go to United College to train as a specialist teacher. So it just rang in my mind because I wanted a full package for Voice. So when I finished my training, I taught for 2 years. And then in 1993, I went to United College to train now as a specialist teacher, mainly focusing on those with visual impairment, or that's those with low vision and blindness. So that's what really triggered me to go into the issues of disability, because I felt that I was shortchanging him. I needed him to to get everything from me. And that's what exactly I did. So from 94 onwards, that's when my journey in the ability field started, when I started teaching at Jairo Still School for the Blind.
Amazing, amazing. We now have Reverend Maforo with us now. Reverend Maforo, can you greet your audience as well as greet our guests?
Oh man, that's I'm so happy to be here. It's a happy Friday, and so happy to have an opportunity to talk to Professor Tsitsi Chataika. How are you, Professor?
I'm good. How are you, Reverend Jacob Maforo? It's nice to see you. Unfortunately, I don't know what's happening to my camera, but
Okay.
I can see you. You all look amazing.
Well, thank you so very much. I'm so regretting I can't see you face to face here. At least
Oh,
you can
it's so
see us.
sad. I don't know why.
Well, I'm happy. I just came in here while you were talking about your journey, and I wish I'd been here earlier to just hear you talk about just describing the whole journey, not specifically for the um, disability policy and education. But I have known you as a person, Professor Chataika, and so glad that you are a proud citizen who has invested so much. I am proud to know you, the work that you have done to this end, and how it has helped to change the nation, one person at a time, because we cannot change the whole world without focusing on one person at a time. So I'm glad to to be associated with you, and it seems like you were talking about your journey from Kadoma. This is where I got to know you. I worked with you in the YMCA and just advocating for young people. You have been an advocate all the way, and here we are sitting here talking about that journey, because we want to specifically narrow ourselves to how God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. So I'll let you continue so that I won't really take out words, from your mouth. But I think we are trying to emphasize here this day that you have started as an ordinary person, but you are making an impact at a national and maybe, yes, international level. So I'll be happy for you to continue to narrow it down to the fact that you are and you were an ordinary person, but there has been inspiration in your life, and I came in when you were talking about that inspiration. So we want to move on, for you to, I just want you to describe that ordinariness of Professor Tsitsi Chataika. Can you just visit that a little bit?
Thank you very much, Reverend Maforo. And I think my life describes what I would call from humble beginnings into someone who is acknowledged at international level. I grew up in Kadoma, and I think some people might know Kadoma very well. It's a mining city, and it didn't have many resources when we were growing up, because I was born in 1967, and I grew up in a very humble family. I don't want to use the word poor because it's very subjective.
It's abused.
How do we define poor?
The word poor
Yeah,
is
it is
very abused.
abused. And now when I look back, I can actually see what I learned from those humble beginnings where we grew up, we had to make ends meet in order to go to school. And I remember when we were at school, every day you'd come back from school, if you take your basket of vegetables, you go to sell because that's where school fees is coming from in order to support my mother because we're quite a big family, come from a family of 10. So it was very difficult to raise 10 children and with very few resources. So for me, putting shoes on my feet was a luxury. Uh, I think I won my first pair of shoes in 1988 at my sister Chimpo's wedding. They were tennis shoes. So because my feet were not used to wearing shoes, I only wore them, I think, for about 4 days, and there were the holes all over the place because my my toes could not be contained into this thing called shoes, tennis shoes, because I wasn't used to that. And yeah, and we didn't have clothes. It was so easy for me because I knew I only had three: my uniform, the one for church, and the one to wear at home. So that's, to me, that was the life. But I think what I drew from that as a family is there was so much love.
Yes.
The God's love, because my family, they were deep rooted in Christianity.
Yes.
So it really helped us to be who we are today. And the issue of embracing diversity, it came from my family. Because I remember when we were growing up in Kadoma, my mother, can you come again,
I was
Reverend?
just agreeing with you, and that Christianity helped shape the family because you were tied together.
Yes, absolutely. And so it was quite difficult, but that being together as a family, it was kind of a total package. And I remember my mother would, have all these different people coming to our house, despite our level of having little resources, but she would accommodate people with mental illness that would come into our house to have whatever we're eating. And I was like, what's wrong with my mother? How can she allow all these people come to our house? But then as I was growing up and now looking back, I can see where all this came from. So to me, my parents were the best advocates that I'd ever seen. And it kind of shaped me to see or to address issues of marginalization so that no one is left behind. And to just understand that we are all God's image. So nobody should define somebody or undermine somebody to the extent that they see them as subhuman. So this is where I was coming from. And so it was quite difficult. And to worsen the matter, when I was in Form 4, I think we were the first cohort to go into Form 1 after independence.
Yes.
So there were so many students going to school. I remember at Remuka High School where I did my O-level, we were 535 students in the O-level class. So you can imagine the number of students that were there. And the majority failed when we wrote our examinations, including myself. I want you to see the humble beginnings and the times God takes you through the furnace in order to sharpen you. I failed my O-level and I only had 2 O-level passes, C's, and the rest were D's. And I was like, okay. I wasn't bad in class. I was quite good, but I think it was a lesson to just appreciate and understand what goes through a mind or somebody who has not made it when they really want to succeed, but they can't succeed. So it made me a very good counselor.
Oh man, we are losing you. Are you there?
I think she's lost.
So as I'm saying, success delayed is not success denied. And out of those two O levels, here sits a professor, and
Yes.
everybody, when I share my story, make us think that no, you failed, but that's not true. You just want us to push harder. But I say this is my life, and that's how God works. He qualifies the unqualified.
Ooh.
And what you need is don't lose your vision. Focus, focus, focus. So when you've got your vision or your goal there, whatever happens during the way should not divert you, but you should keep on looking at the goal until you get it, like what Apostle Paul says.
Yes.
You haven't got it yet, but you definitely get it. Keep on moving. So I had this vision. And when I was growing up, no matter how poor I was, but I had this in my mind to say, I don't want to, I want to be somebody. I remember sharing with some family members to say, for some reason, I feel that I want to be an international figure. And there, I didn't know what that means, but I had that in my mind to say, I want to be an international figure. In my area of study, I want somebody in Japan, somebody in the United States, somebody in the UK to know that there is Chataika in Zimbabwe who is doing this particular work. And this is what happened. So if you have got a vision, it carries you until you get where you want to be.
Well,
Let me stop
I think you
a
have
bit if you want to come in and ask anything before I continue.
So
go ahead, Monica.
I just want to give you a second, Dr. Chataika, to send the link I sent you on WhatsApp, to send you for you to just click and send to friends and family, so that they can watch the show.
I've done that already.
Oh, okay. So, Dr. Reverend Maforo, go ahead. Thank you.
I think that as I came in, she was talking about her journey from the classroom experience with children until she goes to the United College of Education. And I think I disrupted her there. I wanted her to continue to talk about the journey of how she got to where she is now, because we want to make sure before we end the program, she talks about the advocacy part of the work she's doing and the policies, the disability policies in Zimbabwe. What is the framework like? So, yes, we'll let her continue.
Mm-hmm.
I lost her.
If we lost her, I hope she'll come back. She'll come back in. Okay, so probably in the meantime, you can share some of what you know.
I will. While we wait.
While we wait,
Professor,
share.
I think I am just honored. Humbled is the right word to have here for the journey she has gone through and her experience. I was just sharing.
Hello,
Earlier.
I don't know what's happened. That's Africa.
There she
for
is.
you. So,
There she is.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Thank
Africa
you.
for
I
you.
think you are back now.
Those
And
are some of the dynamics that we have in Africa.
well, I was already trying to talk about what in your absence. I was talking about the journey that you have been and so forth, but I didn't want to take away from the explanation you are about to give. So please go ahead. I was about to say go away. I mean, go
Can you
ahead.
come again, Reverend Maforo?
No, I just wanted you to continue talking about your journey to where you are now. I think we ended with the
Okay.
College of
Thank you
Education.
very much. I will. Thank you. So after failing my O level, because I knew what I wanted, and as I said, I wasn't a I was an average student, and I knew I was good enough to pass, but I always take it as an opportunity. God wanted me to really appreciate and understand what it means to fail. So now when I talk to student parents, I'm a good person to talk about it, and I always encourage and not to look at what has happened. We can learn from it, but at the same time, we should understand that the child can actually do better with all the support. Just imagine if my parents had left me, I wouldn't be where I am today. But I just picked up my pieces and then I went back to write my O levels, which I passed. And from that day up to today, I've never failed in my life. I'm always maybe in the top three of every class that I'm in. And people don't fail at one point. They don't even understand. But to me, I took it as a learning curve. God wanted to teach me something to appreciate human diversity and how best we can groom and develop our youths so that they can still continue with their journeys despite any challenges they meet in their lives. So I trained as a teacher, and then after training as a teacher in 1994, boom, YMCA came. YMCA is part. When I see YMCA, I see an organization that developed me into a leader where I am today. I I headed the YMCA in the youth department as the leadership development chairperson, as a chairperson for Kadoma branch, and that's where I kind of, you know, see myself changing into a better person who understands issues of marginalization, because we're looking at youth with all the challenges and how best we can empower them. So it kind of shaped me and made me not be scared of being a leader. And now I'm not scared of anyone. Even if I'm given a room full of presidents, I know how to handle them. Yeah, I can handle them without any challenges. It's because of how I was groomed. And I then left Jairus Chiri School for the Blind, and I joined the University of Zimbabwe after I graduated in my undergraduate degree in special needs education. I became the disability coordinator, to ensure that students with disabilities within the universities are integrated socially, academically, emotionally, spiritually, and supporting them in their studies to make sure that they achieve what they're supposed to achieve. Because then it was very difficult for society to appreciate and understand that persons with disabilities can also be part of the education system, especially at university level. And now I can sit down and relax to see the number of students that pass through my hands. And I just say, this can only be God, nobody else. This can only be God. And it just gives that satisfaction to see how much you have changed other people's lives. And in all this, I think one attribute that I think I got from my parents is humility. I've always said, if education you to the extent that you are out of reach of communities, then to me that's not education. So there's a difference between education and and wisdom. You can have all the academic knowledge and stuff, but if you don't know how to utilize it to make you go into communities and understand communities better, then for me, that's not education.
We lost Professor Chataika.
No, we haven't. On my end, she's still here.
Okay.
Oh, maybe she's.
I think she's.
I can hear you all.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Please go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Please go ahead. Yes, we can hear you.
Hello,
go ahead.
Reverend Maforo, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good.
We can hear you very well.
So,
yes.
So after the University of Zimbabwe, I then applied for a scholarship to go to the United Kingdom.
Well, we cannot hear you now.
The sound is disappearing. So, can you hear us?
Okay, while we wait for Professor Tsataika, I know I can see she is there. She's probably hearing us. And I think she's talking, but
we can't hear.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and speak to Reverend Maforo.
I think that the challenge that we have is to bring people to a place where they have an appreciation, not only about disabled people, but they also have an appreciation of the bottlenecks that we have in our culture, including stereotyping disabled people and hearing from someone who has worked, continues to work at different levels to advocate for the disabled people, then I think this is the way forward. So when we are saying at these different levels, we mean that she has talked about how her mother used to embrace and let people with different disabilities into their home. That's number one. Number two, her next encounter is with students, disabled students, when she becomes a teacher. Number three, so there at that level, we are looking at the education for the disabled people. But then we then look at how, the education policy is equipping educationists to be able to provide appropriate education, appropriate language, appropriateness. And therefore she goes into more education, and she is better equipped. And I think the next level was, so she worked with the Jairus Jiri School of the Blind in Kadoma. So that is another level of involvement. But then she moves from there to going to the education at tertiary level. So I think it's so significant to appreciate that she has that wide knowledge, wide involvement in integration, in education. But I think, and we have talked about education in tertiary level, so that we don't only talk integration into the society, but we are also talking about the employment of disabled people. There has to be lots of education awareness raising.
Mhm.
I think you and we grew up in a Zimbabwe that did not provide for uh, facilities, accessibility of
Mhm.
building. I can talk about many buildings that no building was disabled accessible, so people could. How could you then even
So,
employ someone into the sixth floor?
mhm.
How could you get someone into the fifth floor? So, besides employment, we're also talking about, if there are services and those facilities, infrastructure that is not appropriately designed, how do the disabled access
Mhm.
sources? So I think what we will hear from here is also the policy function, the policy formulation, that, you know, it's it when we come to policy, it's not just Monica's decision. How do
Mhm.
I make my house, my building, my office accessible to the? It's about a national focus of
Mhm.
uh, institutionalizing those policies so that every government office, every educational facility,
Mhm.
every employment sector
Mhm.
accommodates, yes, special accommodation uh,
It's, yeah.
for the disabled. I don't know. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but I have a view of life in the village and a view of life in the city. Nothing was designed special accommodations. You can speak to it.
Mhm. Nothing was designed to accommodate people with several different disabilities. There no wheelchair accessibility in the buses. There not even a single bus. But I also know that when I went to the UK, people with disabilities used to demonstrate so that there is accessibility in different areas. And now most buildings here in the UK have got ramps so that people can access buildings without assistance all the time. It's difficult then to have to carry someone because not there might be no one to be able to carry someone. Also, it affects their dignity as well. Just help them with facilitating them going into buildings without stress, but also even being able to get on the bus to think about all these things when you are preparing for anything.
I have to interrupt you there because I think we better hear from Professor Chataika while she's still there.
Yeah,
Um, and I think that I have to bring her up to breast with how far we have proceeded.
yeah, sure.
Um, I hope she can hear me, but Professor Chataika, we have talked about the different levels of
I didn't hear
engagement.
you.
Did you hear us?
I am hearing you now. We just lost this, so
Oh
the
man.
booster
Oh,
uses this, the
uh,
public booster for internet uses this. So
so
I'm
you
using
had to.
solar, but then because I have no control over the booster,
You probably had to switch to
so
data.
yeah,
Oh,
the
but
joys of Africa.
I'll tell you that we continued to move the conversation forward. So yes, where we are now, we have talked about the different levels of engagement that you have described, of involvement, engagement with the disabled. You have talked about your mother opening your doors and windows to help to allow disabled people. It used to worry you, but we moved on to talk about your classroom experience. We moved to talk about the training, appropriate education for the schools and your involvement with the university. But we were now talking in general about the what prevails, what exists in Zimbabwe in terms of the disability infrastructure, disability policies. How do we shape the policy framework so that it's not just individuals who have to decide as if they are being benevolent and generous. I think they have to appreciate the rights of the disabled and so forth. So this is where we were, and we were now beginning to want to interrogate the policy level vis-a-vis what obtains on the ground.
Okay,
So
thank
I'll
you
let
very
you
much.
talk. So please
Thank you
go
very
ahead
much.
and describe that for us.
Yeah. I think based on the experience that I've had, my master's, my PhD, my postdoctoral fellowship with Stellenbosch University, it kind of grounded me to have an appreciation of policy issues, issues of implementation, disability inclusion, implementation of disability inclusion, and monitoring and evaluating to see to what extent our countries engaged in disability inclusion. So for me, it's quite interesting. When I left Zimbabwe in 2002 up to 2011, when I came back to Zimbabwe in December, that period gave me an understanding at international level the debates that happen at international level and how other countries are working on issues of disability inclusion. So in 2011, I said to myself, I need to go back to Zimbabwe because I've learned so much. Yes, I can stay.
We lost your audio. And again, I think she's back now. Are you back?
If she's speaking, we can't hear her.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, it seemed I'd lost you guys. I think,
Okay,
are you back now?
You talked about, the last we heard was when you made the decision to go back.
Okay. Okay, I made a decision to come back to Zimbabwe because I felt I was more relevant in this country. But because I was out for a while, at local level, people were not sure of. Some they did not know me because I had spent almost 9 years outside Zimbabwe. So I was more involved at regional and international level where I had spent most of my time. So I was a disability expert with African Union, shaping disability issues, strategic plans on disability inclusion. So I did a lot of work with the African Union and also raising disability awareness at that particular level. So yeah, I did quite a lot. And then eventually, people back home now, when they were looking for an international expert to support them in disability inclusion, they were now redirected to me by international agencies that I was working with. Says no, there's Tsitsi in Zimbabwe, and we use here at international level. And then when I also start working.
Mm.
Isn't it interesting?
Policy of
Go ahead.
2001. And not 2001, but 2021, we now have a new policy on disability inclusion, which is quite good. And I have done a lot of research in terms of seeing what organizations are doing, evaluating and monitoring and evaluating disability-related programs. And that is kind of given us a leverage of, causing change in terms of disability inclusion. And now you can see that we have the disability director in the Ministry of Social Welfare. We now have a chief director focusing on disability and social development. And the person is a person with disabilities, which is quite something that is happening now. Organizations working on mainstream organizations, they're now starting to appreciate that you can't do anything. You can't say you are providing services when you are not including persons with disabilities. And that's one advocacy role. I'm a writer. I've written quite a number of books on disability that are well recognized at international level. For instance, in 2019, I wrote a book called the Routledge Handbook of Disability Activism, and it won the Outstanding Award of 2019 on all the books written on social sciences globally. That's a huge...
congratulations.
Thank you very much. And my policy when I'm doing that, I don't write about disability without working with persons with disabilities. So I have capacitated persons with disabilities to become generators of knowledge, not just to be researched on. So in the two books that I've written in 2019 and 2020, most of the authors are also persons with disabilities. So they can, it's a way of capacitating them so that they can also become decision makers, generators of knowledge, because we can't just talk about disability. To amplify their voices, they need to talk about themselves, self-representation, which is quite key. But we need to capacitate them because for a long time they've been marginalized, and some they now have what I call learned helplessness. When you are you are being told for a long time that you are not able to do this, you are not able to do this. You kind of internalize it, and then you don't do anything about your life. But that's where we come in and try to empower and capacitate. So part of capacity development is to actually assist them to be involved in decision-making processes. Like now we are in the process of trying to have a workshop where we train them on conducting research so that they can also, when researchers and other research organizations are working on issues of disability, we don't want them to be who just go from one location to another collecting data so that they can be promoted to become professors and doctors, and yet they are not making significant changes in the communities that are working with. You need to hold their hands, we work together, and they also understand the processes. We also want them to be leaders. There's nothing that can stop a person with disability to become a president of this nation. Yes, he did it, and he was a disabled person. Why not in Zimbabwe?
I agree with you. And Professor,
that's activism for me.
You have brought several perspectives here, and I think that it's important for us to interrogate where we are as a nation because, the big thing that has happened here, the bigger picture is the national policy and the changes and its implementation. I just wanted you to talk briefly. So that's policy, government policy. I want you to talk about perceptions. Do you see changing perceptions amongst the people?
Yeah, I think we need to be very clear. Having a policy much as some challenges in Zimbabwe, I think there's been a positive wave that is happening, especially on supporting persons with disability, which has never happened in this country. Like, for instance, about a month ago, there were about 28 posts that were advertised by the Ministry of Social Welfare to have like disability inclusion officers in different districts so that they can, start raising awareness, start promoting disability inclusion. And they are indicating that most of the persons to get those jobs should be persons with disabilities.
That's significant. Very significant. Go
Issues
ahead.
of changing mindsets, they don't happen overnight. So I'm saying issues of changing mindsets of people, they don't change overnight. It's a process.
Yes. And well, while she's returning, I think that she has talked about perceptions. This should be multifaceted, really, because we need everyone to change their attitude, to change their perception. And when I say attitude, this comes or manifests itself through the language.
Yes.
What kind of language we use when we talk about disability? Because we talk about it as if we are created to help them. But these are people with full rights like everybody else. Sometimes what they don't have, what they can't have, it's not a making of their own, because disability is not inability, but it is how we as society shape society, shape infrastructure that then makes them
Exactly.
like.
Now I can hear you. I can
Good.
hear you loud and clear.
Okay, so continue. You were talking about the
Electricity is
perception.
back.
Yes. Oh, good. I was saying you were talking about
Yeah,
perceptions
perception.
and attitudes and language.
Yeah,
Address that.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, perceptions. Because remember, for a long time, uh, society has been made to understand that if we have a child with disability in the family, it's a curse from God, or we have not appeased our ancestral spirits, or maybe there was maybe the mother was having affairs. We look for something that can cause that. We don't appreciate and understand that there are actually causes of various forms of impairments. If, for instance, we know that if children are not immunized, they can end up having measles, and then when you have measles, it can cause you to become blind or you become deaf. It's those things, or even when a mother is pregnant, what kind of food are they eating? Are they taking unprescribed drugs? All those things, they can end up having some form of impairment. And some are hereditary. They run in the blood, in the DNA of the family. So if we are not aware of that, then it becomes difficult. Like, for instance, I've seen people divorcing. Why? Because they have a child with disability or a child with albinism. But for one to have a child with albinism, both parents need to have a gene, an albinism gene. You can't, if another parent doesn't have that gene, you will never have a child with albinism. So it has to come from both parents in order to have a child with albinism. But how many know about that? Because people always think that albinism, because it's different. Like when you're moving around and you see someone maybe with a very light or kind of white eyes and with white eyelashes, that's a sign of albinism, but it is not
progressed,
mature into a fully fledged albinism. So it can be the albinism can be the eyes or in the mouth. You see someone with bit darkish, but they're very light mouth, or someone is dark and then they have a very light patch on their bodies. It could be sign of albinism, but people don't take it as albinism. They only want to see someone with a white skin with no melanin and white hair, and then they say this is albinism. So it's all to do with awareness raising, so people can start appreciating where we are coming from and why is this happening. So yeah, so the issue of perceptions are quite challenging, and mindset. So in communities that we have worked in, we have tried to raise awareness, and once communities appreciate, they can actually drive the inclusion.
Yeah, it is important to do it on a community level so that they educate each other, and it just moves from one
Hello,
person.
can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes, go
you're
ahead.
back. And I think while you are at it, please talk about. I am very keen to hear about the
Okay.
language. I want to hear
Yeah.
you also address language. How do we talk? What should we not say? What are the do's and don'ts in terms of language? How we communicate at communication level with the disabilities, something that should never make anybody feel like they are less than anybody. Talk about language. Did I lose you?
I think her sound is gone.
Okay.
Yeah, language, you see, it plants a negative seeds in people, and it even starts from when older people are speaking, kids can hear, and then it's the language, it's the attitude, and then that is also what brings the fear. Because if something is being talked about negatively, nobody wants to be associated with that with a person who's being treated that way. No one wants rejection, and that just affects the quality of life for those people. And so it is important that people know the do's and don'ts, what to say and what not to say, because it has been said so many times. Sometimes it seems normal when it is not. So I think we're going to round off. Can
Yeah.
you just give your conclusion in 1 minute, and then we can probably expand this,
Sure.
because there are so many things to talk about where disability is concerned.
Well, I think what I should say is thank you so much to Professor Chataika, Professor Tsitsi Chataika, for accepting to come on a short notice on this program. Number two, we are so thankful about your experience that you acquired elsewhere. Okay, you acquired it in Zimbabwe, but some of it elsewhere. And when you had accumulated that wealth of knowledge, you said to yourself, where will this be most appreciated? And
Mm-hmm.
you wanted to come and bring home your training, your skills, your passion. And this is what you are doing. You are bending over backwards beyond your 8 to 5 job at the University of Zimbabwe. You are helping at the level of policy for the nation. And you have given us what people want or must hear, that God does not call the qualified, but God qualifies the call,
Mm-hmm.
right? God uses ordinary people do extraordinary things, and that's what she has done. And she is inspired to serve, and she's instilling and inculcating that sense of responsibility to the nation, those around her, to her students. And today she is doing that through this program. We are happy to have gathered our ideas together to talk about this. I think, like you said, we will expand this and find ways of addressing the gaps, because we do have glaring gaps at a national level where we still have to deal with perceptions. We still have to deal with capacitation. We still have to deal with resources and address pertinent needs for those who may be disabled. We want to change from what we used to see as children, where, you know, some families, they locked up. They locked up somebody who was able. And we have seen that in public transport, that some people don't give them the opportunity. There are seats that people could offer. Most buses, they have seats that must be, first of all, be occupied by the disabled. Then if they're not there, other seat. But many people, they rush to those seats without preference. So we want education, awareness raising to happen. And thank you again for this. We will meet again tomorrow as we bring back Langton Mabanga. And thank you to our audiences today. I saw, and you can talk to some of the audiences there, but I saw Muhammad Ali Chatonda.
Yes.
I saw
Faith Saruzai, thank you. Yeah. There was a gentleman here who said probably he might contact you.
Okay.
Prithvijari Singh. He says he wants to migrate to a country where he may be able to utilize his passion for conservations of birds in their precious habitats.
Okay, we can do that in the background, and yes. I hope you will be able to get hold of either me or you. Let's do that. But to our audiences, we want to say goodbye and God bless you.
Okay, I think Professor Tsitsi wants to say goodbye to her audience.
Oh, great.
Go ahead and give a recap and say goodbye to your audience, if you can hear us. Professor Tsitsi? Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Professor Tsitsi?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. So I'll give you 2 minutes to just round off and conclude your discussion, and then we can come back again on another day.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
You can probably just point out what you wish or what you would like the people people of Zimbabwe to take away from this discussions, where perceptions and attitudes towards people with disabilities are concerned. Okay. I think our sound here, technical problems with maybe electricity or network. So we are going to come back again. There was just so much to talk about. Next week, Professor raised an issue that we're going to be talking about next week, which is we're going to be talking to someone who's got albinism, and are going to find out about their experiences and what we can do to support them instead of marginalizing them. Tomorrow, we have Mr. Mabanga, who's going to talk about the 2-hectare life model. We're excited about that. So we're going into talking about farming. Thank you so much for spending time with us. We will see you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.